The viewpoints expressed on Night Fright are not necessarily those of the host, the staff, the sponsors, or the affiliate stations. Tonight's program may contain graphic themes or images. Viewer discretion is advised.
There is a time for question. There is a time for answers. There is a time to challenge. There is a time to speculate. There is a time for change. There is a time for truth. The time is now. Welcome to Night Fright, your voice in the dark for horror and conspiracy. And now your host, Brent Hall.
Let's wait for that last minute little bit of guitar to fade away, and that's a double stack Marshall for anybody that's asking. And I jumped off at Ala Pete Townsend. Well, I broke my knees when I did. Showtime. Welcome to the show. I'm very excited tonight. We've got a great guy returning with my friend Richard Syrett is here. Richard was here, as you know, several months ago, announcing that he was doing a wonderful, wonderful conference, and the conference came off spectacularly, I have to say. Richard wears so many hats, it's absolutely incredible. Of the Conspiracy Show at 7:40 a.m. every Sunday at 11 p.m. Eastern Time. He's also the same executive producer and everything for the Conspiracy Show on Vision TV, shown here in Canada. And also, fans from around the world will know Richard from coast to coast when he co-hosts, when he settles in on a Saturday night, usually to fill in for George Norrie or someone else, George Knapp perhaps sometimes. Richard, welcome back to the show, and thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, my friend. Great to be with you. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for asking.
Did you actually jump off an amp a la Pete Townsend?
When I was much younger, but not for that theme, not that particular theme. I've been in music all of my life, but... and
I'm impressed, man. You've got street cred.
Do you play music, Richard, at all?
As a child, I played on the linoleum. Does that count?
Absolutely. And do you sing to your kids when they're going to sleep?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
yes.
You see that.
And they tell me to stop. And they tell me, cut it out, Dad.
Dad, we know you're into horror, but really, do you have to bring it home? Richard, you've got a whole bunch of things going on, and I'm so excited for you because it couldn't happen to one of the best guys in the industry, folks. Richard is top-notch at what he does, and I can't say that enough. I was at his conference last May, and it was just absolutely, absolutely spectacular and just top-notch all the way around. What's going on with you this year? Can you tell us about the new one that's coming up, the new conference you've put together?
I sure can.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Brent. Wednesday, November the 4th, so 3-4 weeks away, and we'll be doing this one at the University of Toronto at the Oisey Auditorium right there on Bloor Street, and it's called As in the Days of Noah, and we're bringing in two fabulous speakers, L.A. Marzulli, who wrote the Nephilim Trilogy, and he's also the producer and host of a TV series called The Watchers. And he'll be talking about the Nephilim, of course, the reemergence of the Nephilim, giants, how all of this relates to the UFO alien abduction phenomenon, and also how it relates to biblical end times. And we're also bringing in Carl Gallups, who is a frequent guest on my radio program. I've also had him on Coast to Coast, and he was on my TV show. We did an episode on Bible codes. But Carl will be coming up to talk about the trumpet days of Revelation, which was the subject of his, not the most current book, but the one prior to that was called Final Days, Understanding the Trumpet Days of Revelation. So Carl Gallups, L.A. Marzulli, Wednesday, November the 4th. It's an evening event, 7 to 10 p.m. at the Oisey Auditorium at the University of Toronto, St. George campus. And if they just go to my website, strangeplanet.ca, and click on the live events page, and that'll take you right there, and you can get all the details and even order tickets right there.
That sounds terrific. I was just going to ask you if there was information available online that people could either order tickets, catch the address, and travel instructions how to get there, because I know going back to the conference you had in May, you had people traveling from as far away as Great Britain, if I'm not mistaken.
We did. We had a gentleman that came in from England. We had another fellow who traveled in from Winnipeg. That was in April. And then prior to that, we did another one in Oshawa in November, and we had a couple that flew in from Los Angeles and elsewhere. So, yeah, we're very fortunate that the word is getting out there, and people are coming to these events. And I hope you'll be able to join us as well as my guest, Brent, on the 4th of November.
Oh, that'd be wonderful. Thank you so much. I'll make a note of that, and absolutely, if I'm able to, I will be there without hesitation. The last one was just outstanding. Let's talk a little bit about your beliefs in, the Nephilim trilogy, the Trilogy books that Marzulli, who's going to be a guest. Do you believe in the thesis that he has?
I do, and I think we've talked about this before, Brent. It's not necessarily a popular stream of thought within the UFO community.
No, it's certainly
as you know. Yes, as you know, I'm an Orthodox Christian, so I tend to put everything through my faith filter, and it's never quite made sense to me, the idea of extraterrestrials interacting with human civilization. Not that I don't think the Bible, comes right out and says that there are no extraterrestrials, there is no life on other planets, but it doesn't fit with the biblical narrative. I mean, what purpose does that serve? However, if we look at them, these aliens or the pilots of these crafts, if we look at them as interdimensional entities, possibly from the angelic realm or the demonic realm, then it starts to square with the biblical narrative. And we go back to Genesis, and it talks about the Nephilim. Also in the book of Enoch, which is not part of the biblical canon, although it is considered part of the Apocrypha. And Enoch talks about fallen angels commingling with the daughters of men and creating this race of giants or titans, if you will, Nephilim. And if we look at Greek mythology, of course, and other cultures, I mean, almost every culture, every civilization has sort of their version of titans, a pantheon of gods, and this, I believe, explains what Enoch is talking about in Genesis. It talks about there were Nephilim on the earth in those days, and there will be again. So if we look at the modern day UFO abduction phenomena in that light, it starts to make sense, at least to me as a Christian, that what we are talking about it's a repeat of the Old Testament. Jesus in Matthew, I think it's Matthew 24, talks about in the end times it will be as in the days of Noah. So instead of these fallen angels commingling with the daughters of men, now we insert alien abductions, creating hybrids, alien hybrids, which seems to be part of the abduction phenomena as well. People talk about undergoing horrific experimental procedures and so forth, being poked and prodded and things extracted and things inserted. And we have also reports of women who claim that they've been impregnated and then abducted again at a later date, and the child is removed, taken away. At some point they're shown this alien human hybrid. So to me, sort of all the ducks line up, and I mean, I don't. How do you feel about that?
Well, I kind of agree with you because David Jacob was on the show several weeks ago, and just last week, a good friend of yours and mine, Ali Sedaten, was here, and we talked at
Yes.
great length, and www.nightfrightshow.com, folks. Shows are there free for you. They're in the archives as well as Richard Syrett's show, his previous show is there as well. And there's something to it because especially Ali talked about the various empires. And he was talking about comparing it to the book of Revelations where there was 7 empires. And he feels that we've gone through 6. And the 7th empire to control humanity would be this hybrid, if you will, to coin a phrase from David Jacob. And it's terrifying to think that human beings on their own planet will be subjected to some kind of monarchy over themselves, something that we've never experienced before. What was interesting is when I asked David Jacob if he felt that the hybrids, he doesn't call them hybrids, this particular species, are even aware that they're not human. And he said probably not. And that's terrifying because,
Yes.
we could be walking around. I always make the same joke, though, Richard. I always say, we've got aliens here in Canada. 3 of them right now are running for office in Ottawa.
Yes.
But yeah, there's
Indeed. Yes, indeed.
Indeed, you do. There's something to it, and it disturbs me no end. It really does because I always like to feel that freedom is inherent in our being, and if the thought of having something reigning over us, dictating to us what we can or cannot do, and we're subservient to them, is absolutely terrifying. Perhaps it's the lack of control, and it puts me somewhat in empathy for those of the folks that are around that have been abducted, and the
Yes.
ostracization that they go through, because this is a common phenomenon now, folks. Richard and I can talk some more about this and his views on it. More and more people are feeling brave enough to come forward and saying, yes, I was abducted too. And the numbers are vast. So it's part of a human phenomena. We must examine this and see what's going on and not ostracize people. If it is a mental illness and it's a coping mechanism, let's find out.
Precisely. Well, I was trying to remember the stats. I believe Dr. David Jacobs was one of the authors of the Roper poll, or at least he commissioned the Roper poll. I'm not sure who else was involved with that. May have been Dr. John Mack, but I'm trying to remember the statistics based on this survey, and it was something on the order of 600,000. Based on the survey, 600,000 possibly Americans have been abducted.
And does
that sound reasonable? Am I remembering that correctly?
Very close to it, if not more. I thought it was in the millions. But anyways, I just wanted to say that's just the United States, folks. I mean, this is a global phenomenon. There's reports coming in from around the world, from every corner of the world. There's Persian reports coming in, flooding in, Indonesian reports. So it's not just a Western phenomena, is what I'm trying to say. People watching, I hate this excuse when they say, well, you're watching too much TV or you're watching too many sci-fi movies. This is a real phenomena. People are suffering. When people suffer, let's find out what's going on so we can relieve the suffering.
Yeah, the other disconnect for me is that people often, I had a woman on on my program last week, the week before, who spoke of her abduction phenomena in almost like in glowing terms. And yes, there was some initial trauma and so forth. And but then, she said, well, she was a small child. And I said, well, did you give consent? And she said, well, I sort of think I did. And I said, well, no, you didn't, because there's no such thing as consent with a minor. You were taken against your will. And yet she ascribed all of these almost angelic qualities to these entities that took her aboard this craft. And I'm thinking, as I'm hearing this story, and I've heard others speak in a similar fashion. I'm thinking it almost sounds like the Stockholm Syndrome.
Interesting you bring that up because I asked Ali last week as well. I said, is this new empire the equivalent of what we would call the Antichrist? And without missing a beat or a hesitation in his voice, he answered, yes. And the chills went up and down my spine as it is now to think that this new movement of hybrids, ETs taking over the world, could indeed be the final Antichrist and coming to the final apocalypse. And that scares me.
Oh, well, it should.
Yeah.
It should, except, not to get overtly religious or spiritual, except that as Christians, we know, we've seen the movie, we know how it ends, and it ends well. So ultimately, we have, yes, there will be some very tumultuous times, and it will be frightening, but it ends well. The good guys win.
The good guys win, thank goodness. It's unlike the Titanic when we know the ending, and it's unlike the crucifixion when we know the ending. So that's good news.
Indeed, yes.
Tell me about your television show. Now, this is something that's been going on for several years now, and congratulations to you. And this is fantastic here in Canada on Vision.
Thank you. Well, it is. We're just finishing off delivering new episodes for season 4. And I don't at this hour have an exact air date. I wish I did, but that's forthcoming. But, if it's not November, it'll be very early in the new year. But this will be season 4. This brings us up to, let's see, I believe we're at 50 episodes now. These will be airing across Canada on Vision TV, as you say. It's been a long road. We started back in 2010. I remember our very first interview, the very first episode. I traveled in a van down to Rochester to interview Richard Dolan, and so we logged a lot of miles, a lot of hotel rooms, a lot of sandwiches shared between the crew. I mean, we did this, or among the crew. We did it really on a shoestring budget, a Canadian production, go figure.
Yeah.
But here we are, 50 episodes later in Canada, and we've sold now to the United States. We were syndicated in the U.S. for 2 years. That's now wrapped up, and we're now available. The first 2 seasons, complete seasons, available on Amazon.com to rent or buy in HD. We've sold now in Australia. We recently sold in Thailand, and we're in various parts of Europe. We recently sold to Poland, and we're pretty well covering most of the Italian-speaking market in Europe. So it would be Italy, Sicily, Sardinia, Corsica, the Vatican City, the Italian-speaking market in Switzerland. So we've got a nice foothold in Europe as well, and hoping that it just continues to grow and expand. But it's been a lot of work, a real arduous journey. I never anticipated, the work that would be involved. But I've met so many amazing people. I've crisscrossed the United States, I don't know how many times, England. It's been quite a ride.
Can you tell us about one of your shows? What have people got to look forward to this year?
Let's see. We're doing we started working on a JFK episode. I mentioned that because that's obviously something that's very near and dear to you.
So, yes.
Being one of the foremost JFK researchers around.
Oh, you're very kind, but thank you.
And we started that episode a few seasons back, and we were hoping that it might air for the 50th anniversary. That didn't come to pass. However, that's going to be in season 4. We're going to do an episode on GMOs and fluoride. I think we're sort of doing a kind of a real paranormal topic. We're going to talk about Ouija boards and whether they may be, are they a harmless toy or perhaps a portal to the netherworld. So those are the 4 that sort of immediately come to mind, but there are others.
That sounds like a great lineup already. And how long is the show? Is it a half-hour show, an hour show?
Yeah, these are half hours. Yes, typically what they'll do on Vision anyway is they'll run a new episode and then back to back with an older episode. I don't know if they have that in mind for season 4, but they have previously. So it'll be like an hour's worth. And right now, I know that they're, as they say in the radio business, the episodes are in high rotation. I think Vision is airing older episodes, I think on Thursday nights or something at 10 or 11 o'clock. So, if you hang around on Vision long enough, and there's so many other great things to watch in Vision if you're into Britcoms and so forth, but you'll see my big fat mug on there eventually.
He's not fat at all, folks. www.nightfrightshow.com, and I'll prove it. Go to that website. You'll see a picture of Richard. Click on Richard's picture. That'll take you right to a spot.
Heavily photoshopped, I'm sure.
No, and absolutely not. Absolutely not. And that'll take you right to his website, which is strange. Here, I've written it down here, and I can't read my own handwriting. What's the name of your website, please, Richard?
It's strangeplanet.ca. We recently sort of rebranded it and relaunched it because people have trouble spelling my name. So now there are no excuses. Strangeplanet.ca, and from there they can access the radio program, the TV program, and also the live events.
Okay, and also you have another website called The Conspiracy Show. Is that right?
That's for the TV show, yes, but they can also access that from strangeplanet.ca. So it's kind of one-stop shopping. Just go strangeplanet.ca and you can get to where you need to go from there.
Richard, you've been now behind the camera, you've been behind the microphone, and now you're in front of the camera. What are the differences between being behind a microphone on radio and being in front of a camera on television?
Wow. To be honest, radio is my first love in terms of media. The connection you have with an audience in radio, and you know this, particularly late night radio, is very special. Television, it's a real kick. Let's face it, to see. Just simply because of the amount of work involved, and then to see it come to fruition and to see the show actually get on the air. It's a real kick, no doubt. But for me, it is the connection you have with the audience every week.
Yes.
They may call in and speak with you, or they'll write to you, or they'll email, or they'll tweet, and there's an immediate connection there. And the thing about late night radio audiences, again, as you well know, is that they are fully engaged 100%. They're not passive listeners. People often ask me, wouldn't you rather do a morning show or an afternoon show? Yes, the money is much better, we all know. But the audience they're in and out of their car, they're carpooling, they're in conversations. The program becomes wallpaper. They're passively listening. That's why late night radio audiences are so special, because they're 100% engaged. They're an active audience, and it's long form radio, which you can't do in any other day part. You can talk with somebody for an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours, like on Coast to Coast AM. Where else can you do that? Nowhere. So to me, that's the difference, is the connection with the audience and radio. TV, yes, it's exciting. There's a lot of travel involved. You meet great people face to face. But if I had to choose one, it would be radio. And I've got a face for it, so that it all works out in the end.
I always say, Richard, I have a perfect body for radio. Not so much for television, but radio, I'm really good at it. I'm a big guy, folks. Richard,
we're both a couple of husky fellas. That's all right.
Not so much you, but anyways, listen, is it a character you get into for your radio show at all? Or are you just, here I am?
It's funny. I'm teaching broadcasting in the broadcasting program up at Durham College in Oshawa, and I'm telling my first year students about this now, about getting behind a microphone, and the first rule, of course, is you have to be yourself. You have to be authentic, because people can sniff that out immediately if you're not. So what I tell them is, be yourself, but times 10. So you've got to be, you've got to find that your own voice, and allow the passion and the personality and everything to flow through that microphone. But you have to be yourself, except bigger than yourself. So it's not really a character, I guess. It's me. It's ultimately who I am. I'm just, you know, I guess perhaps more interesting and exciting than I am sitting across the breakfast table from the mighty Aphrodite, who often complains she can't believe I'm in broadcasting because off the air I'm a bit of a mumbler and a grunter.
I'm not a morning person either, buddy. Don't hold it against you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, right.
Aw,
There is a little person in the room, yes.
that's okay. Does the little person want to come on air and say hello?
North, would you like to say hello to all your fans? Say hi.
Hello.
Hello,
Okay.
how are you?
North, he just turned 9 on Saturday, he and his brother. So
Oh, happy birthday. Congratulations, Northie.
he says happy birthday, North.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay.
Oh, that's so cute, Richard. So you've got a whole family there. That's wonderful.
They are they're my reason for living.
Absolutely, without question. Nothing's more important than family, and especially the children aspect of it. When you jump in front of the camera, you were saying behind the radio microphone you have to be 10 times yourself. Do you have to be that 10 times yourself? Perhaps less, perhaps more in front of a camera?
I think I probably tone it down a little bit. It's almost now I have no experience in being on a stage other than doing these live events, but in theater, I mean, and theater I would liken it to a little bit more like radio, where you're really trying to project and put yourself out there because you only have your voice to work with. Um, but in TV, I don't think you can get away with that. It might come across as being a little overwrought. So I'm probably a little more low key on television, but there are so many other things that you can do, obviously, with body language and expressions and so forth. One of the things that I try to do on TV, and upon reflection, it may have made things harder in terms of breaking into the U.S. market, and that is I don't like to proselytize. I'm not Alex Jones, and Alex is great at what he does. Jesse Ventura great at what he does. I'm not those guys, and they tend to be sort of in your face. I mean, that's just part of who they are. They're being authentic. I'm not that guy. I don't like to get up in people's grill. I don't like to preach to them. I guess I have more of a Canadian sensibility. I want to get the information out. I want people to make up their own minds. I'll offer an opinion when I think it's necessary, but for the most part, I'm just trying to provide a safe and respectful platform for people to tell their stories. And sometimes that's not maybe what the American audience wants, but I think what I have done is I've given this whole arena a great deal more credibility because of that style and treatment. I call it more light and less heat.
Yep, I agree totally with you, and I think that's why you've been so successful, and the success will keep on and probably grow for you. Is I think the word is authenticity, and that comes across whenever I've had you on my show, and also whenever I've listened to you, and when you've interviewed me, you were gracious enough to have me on Coast to Coast for the JFK special last year, and I want to thank you so much personally for that.
Oh, well, you made my job so easy, Brent. I mean, it's not like I was doing you a favor.
Oh, you were.
We were putting together. I was fortunate enough to be asked, and normally George Norrie handles the big JFK anniversary shows on Coast. And I'm not sure what happened last year, whether it happened to be on a Friday and he was busy doing his Beyond Belief TV show. But I was asked to come in and pinch hit. And, the producer said, well, who do you want to get? And, of course, I thought of you immediately because,
Very kind.
you're one of the top guys. Why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I reach out to you? So I should be thanking you.
You're very kind. The reason why I mention it is because I had told my mom last year I was going to be on the radio. And of course, I had to drive to Montreal, folks. It was the only place because Coast to Coast requires that you have a landline when you're being interviewed. Well, I live in Kingston, as folks know, and I couldn't find anybody with a landline except my brother. So I drove all the way to Montreal to be interviewed on Coast to Coast at my brother's place. And of course, because I was there, my mother was able to listen on the local AM radio station, and just lost my mom in June. So it was terrific for her to be able to hear her son on the radio, and I do appreciate that.
Yeah,
To bring it up.
well, I'm glad that she was able to hear you as well, and I'm sorry for your loss. It's always devastating. It doesn't matter how old we get, we become, parents and so forth. But when we lose a parent, it's just as devastating as any other time. So, my thoughts and prayers are with you.
Thank you, my friend.
The JFK Assassination, the definitive book by Brent Holland. From inside the Oval Office to Daily Plaza, first-person witness accounts. Order yours right now. nightfrightshow.com.
Let's go back to this wonderful, wonderful conference you're putting together. Now, where did you come up with the idea for this, the theme, if you will?
Well, you mentioned Ali Siadatan, who was on your program, and Ali was sort of the inspiration for this. When I was putting on the conference in Oshawa, we were calling those Follow the Truth. Ali attended, and actually Ali spoke at the conference in November, and he mentioned to me at some point during a break that he'd like to do something, an event like this, and mentioned sort of the subject matter and asked if I would be interested in helping out. So he and two other gentlemen, Bob Buckley and Andrew Zeidman, are sort of the behind-the-scenes partners in all this, and they asked me to help organize it. So they wanted to do something of a biblical theme. Obviously, Ali knows, he's an incredibly brilliant biblical scholar. I learned so much from Ali. He's kind of my go-to guy in terms of scripture and so forth. So they wanted to do something about biblical prophecy, but also involving UFOs and aliens. And so I immediately thought of L.A. Marzulli. And then I thought it would be cool as well to bring in Carl, because that ties in nicely with the whole end times prophecy, and that's really his bailiwick, because understanding Revelation and the trumpet days and so forth.
Can we talk a little bit about his work, Carl Gallup's work? His book
Yes.
called Final Warnings?
Yeah, Carl is a long-time pastor at a Baptist church in Florida. Before that, he was in law enforcement, actually, and he's a broadcaster as well. Has a program down in Florida called Freedom Fridays, and he talks about the trumpet days. There are 7 trumpets that are to sound as we move towards the end times and the return, the second coming, and so forth. And I'm not sure what trumpet it is, but the trumpet warning in Revelation talks about, this is where we hear about Nibiru, and the stars falling from the heavens and poisoning one third of the rivers and 1/3 of the lakes, and this cataclysm that will befall humanity as a result of Nibiru. And what Carl has sort of researched is that wormwood, I believe, is the translation.
Exactly true.
And wormwood is translates into Chernobyl. Chernobyl, the nuclear disaster in the mid-1980s. And if you think about what happened at Chernobyl, where the essentially the concrete lid, if you will, blew off of one of the reactors, and up like thousands of feet into the air. And as they came down in tiny bits and pieces, all aflame, it looked like the stars falling from the heavens and landing on Earth. And of course, we know, in fact, because of the radiation, what happened, polluted the waters and contaminated the soil and livestock, and we still don't have a handle on the human element in terms of the tragedy. We know a great deal of people are sick, but we really don't know how many people died. I mean, we know many of the workers that went in there to try and cap this reactor that melted down succumbed. They were real heroes. I mean, they virtually gave their lives. They went in there and died as a result. But I think the final total we won't know maybe for 30 or 40 years. But the incidence of thyroid cancer and so forth are just off the scale. So the parallels between Wormwood mentioned in Revelation as I believe it's the fifth trumpet, and what happened at Chernobyl are absolutely startling. So that's just one example, but he'll go into a great deal of detail, not only on that one, but the other trumpets, explaining, for example, how Saddam Hussein is mentioned in Revelation, or how he's referenced in Revelation.
I didn't know this.
And
now I've got to go to the conference. Right?
You must. And when he lays it out for you, it is, you mentioned earlier, talking with Ali or Dr. David Jacobs and feeling that tingle up your spine. Well, this will do it to you too.
Yeah, I'm getting one right now, and that's November 4th, which is a Wednesday night in Toronto, folks. All the information for that, by the way, will be, just click on Richard's picture, www.nightfrightshow.com. Just click there. That'll take you right to his website, strangeplanet.ca, and all that information about the conference, November 4th, 2015, in Toronto. What time does it start, Richard?
The doors open at 6:30, and the event starts at 7. 2 hours of speaking, 7 to 9, and then from 9 to 10, there'll be a meet and greet and book signing afterwards.
Oh, man, that's fantastic. That's amazing. So you actually get to meet the people that are speaking.
Oh, yes. Yeah, get to talk to L.A. Marzulli up close and in person, and have him sign a book, and as well Carl Gallup. So if there was any questions that people may have during the conference, that'll be the time to ask it.
And will you be around as well to sign autographs and things of that nature?
Well, if people seriously would want my autograph, they would be welcome to it. Of course, yes, I'll be emceeing, hosting the event, presenting the speakers and so forth, and then yes, I will be there afterwards.
Wonderful. Okay, I'm really looking forward to this. I was going to ask you a question. In the book of Revelations, there's a lot of talk about the people of Israel coming back. And a lot of prophecy, it seems to be based around the 1948 coming back, if you will, of the people of Israel to the Holy Land. Do you believe in part of that prophecy? Do you think that's part of the prophecy, or do you think that's just something that occurred geopolitically and really doesn't have anything to do with Scripture?
Well, if you think about it, yeah, it's in Revelation. I know, Brent, and it may even go further back than that, but I'm not sure. See, there, if Ali were here, he would be able to nail it chapter and verse.
That's okay.
But it certainly is. It is certainly one of those. I mean, here's the thing about prophecy. I think at least a third, or maybe even a half, of the Bible is prophecy. So people who sort of ignore that aspect and they think, well, no, it's the parables, or I read Psalms and so forth, and those are wonderful too. But why is the Bible filled with prophecies? Because, I mean, they're screaming out. They demand our attention. And if you look at the number of those prophecies that have come true, not only about the Messiah and the events surrounding his birth and his life and his death, which are all mentioned in the Old Testament, but the rebirth of Israel and the gathering together of Jewish peoples all over the world, the diaspora, and coming back to Israel. Think about the odds of that happening, and it is prophesied in the Bible. And then in 1948, and yes, there were people working behind the scenes to try and make it happen, but the point is, it did, against all odds. And to me, I mean, who could have imagined that? I'm just trying to think of sort of a parallel. It's almost like predicting that one day all of the Inuit peoples of the world will reunite, and claim New Zealand as their home. I mean, it's just that kind of fantastical and almost seemingly outlandish to suggest that such a thing could ever occur, and yet it did. So that's pivotal. It's pivotal to understand it, because it that has to happen, of course, before the rest of the narrative can unfold.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. In terms of conspiracy, do you think that governments are aware of more than they're letting on, and they're purposely hiding it from us because they view us as children, or do you think it's more of a national security type of situation that they're holding back information from us, that things are actually worse than they're letting on?
I remember speaking with Richard Dolan,
Hmm.
who told me, and Richard Dolan is a superb historian. I mean, yes, he writes about UFOs, but he was if he wasn't a Rhodes Scholar, he was like almost a Rhodes Scholar. He may have missed out just barely for some circumstance, but he's a brilliant mind and a brilliant writer and researcher. And he told me, uh, and again, having a senior moment, but the number of documents now that are classified, not only during the Obama administration, which of course, Obama was elected on a promise of transparency, but the secrecy now is almost Nixonian. Uh, Not to get overly political, but I look at the Obama administration; he's almost equal parts Jimmy Carter and Richard Nixon, um, being, secretive, uh, divisive, and also weak, which is sort of a characteristic I attribute to the Carter administration. Anyway, that's my little political spiel there. But the number of documents now that are classified, you know, it's like two-thirds of government documents, and try and access those even through FOIA. You have to jump through flaming hoops, and then you end up with, for all your trouble and money and energy, you end up with this heavily redacted document that's practically useless. So I almost think that governments now that is one of their main objectives, is to keep things locked down and to keep citizens in the dark, confused, off balance, afraid, anxious, paranoid. Um, and again, because we've been talking about the Bible for
Yes.
most of the hour, I mean, it is, I think, understood in a biblical sense, when we understand, who runs the show ultimately. You know, the Bible tells us it's the Prince of Darkness, right? He was given domain over the earth, but he was given that domain by God, because sometimes God uses evil in order to further his ends.
You can't see
Um,
the light without the dark, so to speak.
that's right. And so it makes perfect sense. I believe that evil exists in the world, and that's why, I mean, it is the ultimate conspiracy, really,
Agreed.
that's contained
Agree.
in the Bible. The attempt to forestall not only the birth of Christ, but the return of Christ. So if we look at things that way, everything that's playing out on the world stage now fits into that narrative.
To stay in the conspiracy realm, and as a fellow Canadian, how do you feel about C-51, Bill C-51? Bill C-51, for my American listeners and listeners outside of North America that are unaware of this bill, is a bill that Canada is trying to bring through that will kind of change civil rights to a certain extent. Now, the excuse, of course, is always national security, that there are imminent threats, and that they need these tools in order to retain people longer, for example, without arrest, without formal charges, things of that nature. I don't want to go too deep into it, but I would like to get Richard's viewpoint of this because he's a fellow Canadian.
Well, yeah, it's overwrought, too far-reaching, all of those things. But I want to say that getting exercise now for Bill 51 is too little, too late. I think we lost a lot of those freedoms and right to privacy and so forth a long time ago, incrementally, without even really noticing it. So I don't know that there's necessarily anything new in C51 that hasn't been already in place to a certain extent. Um, this might be sort of the capper on the cake or whatever, but um, surprisingly, I'm not. I don't know. Maybe I'm becoming complacent, or I'm just sort of sitting back and looking at all of this like a movie and saying, "Yeah, I knew that was coming. Here we go." So I'm not really that angry about it. I'm almost not that I don't think we shouldn't fight it, but I'm almost resigned to this. It's all playing out, according to the script. And the whole listen. There
Go ahead,
is
please.
there is an existential threat to North America. There is a problem with extreme Muslims. The question is, how much of that was sort of precipitated by NATO and Western intelligence? How much of that was um, uh, a creation of the West? But you can't pull that off unless you have adherents. And there are, unfortunately, yes, it is a minority, but even if it's 10%, 10% of 1 billion is 100 million. Now, the national security state in the US, NATO, other British allies, they didn't recruit 100 million radical Muslims. So there was something there. They may have planted a seed, but so it almost now it doesn't matter what created Frankenstein's monster. Frankenstein monster has thrown off its shackles. It's off of the table and it's running through the village. So now we have to stop it, one way or the other.
To make an arc back to where we began, um, with the conference coming up on the as in the days of Noah, do you think this is part of the takeover of the Huberts? Is this part of their plan, if you will, their greater plan?
Uh, well, yeah, I think again from the biblical perspective and the Prince of Darkness ruling this earth. That's right out of his playbook, right? It's
Hmm.
sowing seeds of dissent, creating a turmoil, turning brother against brother, causing upheaval. Absolutely. Um, and there's an interesting theory that when you look at the leaders of the world today, and to a certain extent it has always been thus, but they really are psychopaths. It's almost built into the equation. In order to climb that ladder, to get on top, you must be a psychopath. So the game tends to favor. The odds are in the psychopath's favor. That's why they rise to the top. And so we're almost at the mercy of these psychopaths, and they're not necessarily these knuckle dragging mouth breathers. They're brilliant in many cases. They're sophisticated. They can be very charming. They're not storming around in brown shirts like they did in the 1930s and 40s in Nazi Germany. Now they're wearing Armani suits. They're very refined, but they are psychopaths nonetheless. Make no mistake. And
Yeah, I know it. There's for
it
sure
seems
there's
like you
psychopaths out there. I get emails from them on a regular basis. Trust me.
yeah,
The vast majority of my fan mail, and it's odd to say fan mail because I don't feel comfortable with that at all. Um, they're glowing, and people are so nice and intelligent. The questions they ask, as you well know, Richard, because probably much of my fan base listens to you as well. And but boy, some of them come in and you kind of go, really? So you kind
right.
of look over your shoulder every now and then to make sure nobody's crossed the border.
Well, they're not only in political office. They're on school boards. They're managers. They're Cub Scout leaders. They're everywhere. And leading it back to sort of the whole Nephilim and the alien abduction. There has been a theory that these psychopaths, maybe they are the Huberts, as David Jacobs calls them. Maybe these are maybe they've got some of this Rh negative protein in their blood. which is kind of an interesting theory that everyone or most humans have traces of the Rh protein or the marker in their blood, except there is a small percentage, maybe 10, 15% of the world's population, that are Rh negative. And were these sort of the original hybrids? And it's interesting to note that a lot of them, or a high percentage of the Rh negative people are presidents and kings and queens and bankers and industrialists. It's an interesting theory.
It sure is. Yeah, I think it's something that's well worth examining. I think the gap, what has happened, is a complete perversion of capitalism, unfortunately, where the human being has just dropped right out of the equation. And it certainly is always about the bottom line at this point. Um, I've never seen anything like it in all my years, and I'm an old guy now, but I've never seen the gap between rich and poor. We always hear this cliche, folks, but I've never seen it like this. It's scary. The lack of emergence of a new middle class and the decimation of the older middle class is terrifying. It's frightening. How do you feel about that, Richard?
Yeah, it's true. In terms of the economic data that's coming out, and we're told, particularly in the United States, that we're in the midst of recovery. It's kind of a feeble recovery, but I don't even buy that. I mean, I tend to subscribe to John Williams, who puts out shadow facts and looks at the real unemployment rate. Those are people that have been unemployed for a year or longer, or have simply quit looking for work. You look at the and it's around 25%. The U6, I believe, is the figure that he quotes. The unemployment figure based on those, again, that are no longer looking. And yet we're being told, oh, it's 5%. Well, look around. Talk to your neighbors. And I'm talking now south of the border. I think everyone knows in their heart of hearts that the unemployment rate is way north of 5%. And we are in tough times, and then you look at the debt, $18 trillion just in unfunded liabilities, and they just keep kicking that can down the road, printing more money, raising the debt ceiling. At some point, the dam's going to burst, and it's not going to be pretty. It's going to make 29, I think, look like a walk in the park.
Folks, we're speaking with Richard Syrett tonight. Fascinating. If you want to hear more Richard's work, simply just go online to www.nightfrightshow.com. Click on his picture. That's going to take you to his website, strangeplanet.ca. Now listen to this. He has a radio show weekly. This is how busy he is. He teaches. The radio show, by the way, is Sundays, every Sunday at 11 p.m. Eastern Time, and that's till midnight, 7:40 a.m. And you can listen online as well. Just go to strangeplanet.ca. He's got a television show coming out that he's also put together, and he's putting together another conference. This is his second in 6 months. And this one is called As in the Days of Noah. He's got two outstanding guests coming there. A.L. Marzulli, and he's got a book called the Nephilim Trilogy. It's 3 books. Sorry, my mistake. And also Carl Gallups, and his book is called Final Warnings. He's going to be looking at biblical prophecy as well as the UFO phenomenon and drawing the parallels. We are, or are we, in the end times? And as Richard says, I'm going to leave that up to you, but I would encourage you all to go to the conference. It's taking place in the University of Toronto, Aussie, is that correct? Is that what it's called?
OISE, the Ontario Institute of Secondary Education. It's on the St. George campus, right on Bloor Street. I think, in fact, the Bloor subway gets off right inside the OISE building. I'm not sure if that's the St. George stop, but it's very convenient to get to.
So there you go, folks. And I'll be heading out from Kingston, so without question, it's not that far to go. Wednesday, November 4th, 2015, and the tickets are online. If you go through our website, you can just click on Richard's picture to get right to a spot where you can order from the comfort of your own home. Do you worry about the end times happening now? You have a family?
Well, if we're going to see it during my lifetime, yeah, it's going to be unimaginable. I mean, I like to think I have a pretty strong faith, but you never know, how you're going to react. I mean, imagine, the bowels of hell opening up, and what's going to crawl out of there, and I mean, we're told, the reemergence of giants that are going to make men just, drop dead of heart attacks. It would be unimaginable. Um, so, am I ready for that? Am I? Probably not. Probably not. I guess you have to just. All you can do is pray and continue to search the depths of your heart and soul for this connection with God and so forth. But who knows? I mean, it could be 1,000 years from now. I can't live my life in a sense. We should live our lives thinking it's the last. Every day is the last day, and conduct ourselves accordingly. But on the other hand, I'm not going to live my life in constant fear and paranoia, because that's no way to live either.
Who's on your show this week, Richard? Your radio show.
We actually have L.A. Marzulli stopping by just to kind of tease people on Sunday night at 11, just to give them a glimpse into what he'll be talking about. He's not going to give it all away, of course, but there's so much to talk about with L.A. Marzulli. He's been back and forth to Peru on these various expeditions in search, on the trail of the Nephilim. And of course, we're all familiar with these elongated skulls that they've found in South America. You can go down there, and they're in museums all over the place. Are these the remains of the Nephilim, perhaps? So we'll touch on that, no doubt. And then you've caught me off guard. I'm not sure who's coming on in the second hour from midnight to 1. But again, if they go to strangeplanets.ca and click on the radio show, this week, this week's section, it's all there. And I really need to commend my producer, Albert Vinzel, who's been working with me now for about 1.5 years, 2 years, and he's just doing phenomenal work. You mentioned my busy schedule. I would absolutely would not be able to do what I do without the help and support of people like Albert.
That's great. I want to give a shout out myself to a couple of people, Jen and Karim. I want to give a shout out. They asked me to do that. And here you go. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being fans, both of you. And Kelly Logue, who puts our website together. There's no way I could do this show without you, Kelly, as you well know. So thank you so much, my friend. We're going to have to start to wrap up now, Richard. Is there anything you want to leave the folks with? I talked about the opportunity of meeting so many people over the years. That's the great blessing of this show, and you're one of them, Brent. It's been a real pleasure to get to know you and develop our friendship, and I look forward to many more years of the same. Thank you, my friend. I'm Brent Holland from
You're listening to Night Fright and your host, Brent Holland. The time is now. Your voice in the dark for paranormal and conspiracy.
The JFK Assassination, the definitive book by Brent Holland. From inside the Oval Office to Daily Plaza, first-person witness accounts. Order yours right now. nightfrightshow.com. JFK Assassination, the definitive book by Brent Holland. From inside the Oval Office to Daily Plaza, first-person witness accounts. Order yours right now. nightfrightshow.com.